Hi guys, this is another video of English No Big Deal. My name is David.
And I'm Maddie.
In today's video, we're gonna talk about 15 phrases that are the most important in our Conversation 11. And we hope that you guys have already watched that one. But if you haven't yet, you can actually click on the link right here in order to best prepare so you can learn from this video most efficiently. So what is Conversation 11 all about, Maddie?
Conversation 11 is all about weather. And the reason weather is important is because it is used in day-to-day conversations and also small talk. But you can't always expect the weather to be perfect and amazing. Like in this conversation we had the winter blizzard. So you can change some of these phrases to fit your situation. So I hope you guys enjoy this video. Now let's get started. Number 1, due to and because of.
Hey Maddie, were you in the office last Friday? It seemed like nobody was here, so I couldn't get into the building.
No, of course not. I received an email saying that the office was closed due to unsafe road and weather conditions.
The pronunciation point that you need to be careful of with this phrase is on the word do. So why do we need to be careful of the word do?
Because if you guys want to establish that North American accent with good pronunciation according to North American English, then when you look it up in the dictionary, especially the online Oxford Dictionary, you'll see there are two ways of pronouncing this word. One is for British people, and another way is for North American people. So in this case, we're trying to teach you North American English. That's why you should go for do. The oo sound is very round and very sharp. So due to. Don't say due to. So that's the only pronunciation point for the phrase due to. But the other one, because of. The linking sound here is the only thing that you should keep in mind. So because of. And I know that there are so many ways of pronouncing the word because. Some people pronounce it as because, but the best way to pronounce it is because that's the most natural way according to what we hear every single day in North America. And so when you link it, you'll have because of, right? Because of. And the other one is due to, and this one is because of. And those are the only pronunciation points you should keep in mind for these phrases.
Now, to use these phrases, they are a preposition. Keep in mind, to in due to is not an infinitive marker. For example, I went to buy some groceries. To in this example is an infinitive marker. So just keep in mind the difference. Now, due to here, what you have to have after is either a noun or a verb ending in ing.
And that part is actually about the cause, the reason of the event that you guys are mentioning within your sentence. When using these phrases, make sure that you understand that they can be either standing in front or in the end of your sentence. And so let's give you guys some example. The first one I have is, because of the fire, the restaurant was closed. Now I'm using it at the end of that sentence saying, the restaurant was closed because of the fire.
Another example, I didn't tell him the truth due to her asking me to keep it a secret. And to change it in another way, due to her asking me to keep it a secret, I didn't tell him the truth. Both of these ways are correct.
Number 2, next to impossible.
How did you even get to the office? Most of the roads were covered in ice and slush. It was next to impossible to drive.
So what should we keep in mind for this phrase's pronunciation, Maddie?
The first point that you should keep in mind is upon the words next and to, because next ends with a t sound and to begins with a t sound as well. So we drop one of the t and just say next to.
Another point that I want to talk about for the word next is the k sound in the middle of the word next. When you say next, the k sound is actually being stopped within your throat. So actually you don't have to say next, because it's gonna take you a lot of time and effort to say it, and it sounds really weird to the ear of native speakers. And so say next, stop the k sound right there. But you have to stop it, otherwise it's gonna come out as if you're saying the word nest. And nest means a totally different thing.
The next pronunciation point you need to keep in mind is upon the word impossible. Don't change the p in impossible to the b. Don't say impossible. That is not correct. Impossible.
Also for this word, just because it contains both the P and the B sound, so that's why it might be difficult for us to pronounce it at first. And so it's very easy for you to mix up between the P sound and the B sound and change it around and say impossible or impossible or impossible. Those ways are incorrect. And so to make sure that you say it correct, try to say it as slow as you can. Impossible. Make sure that you have the right movements for your mouth and your tongue so you get the sounds correctly for these p and b sounds. And then when you get used to it, you can speed it up a little bit and say impossible. Now you get all of those sounds perfectly pronounced and enunciated.
That's a really good point to make. It's better to say it slowly and correct rather than fast and incorrect and get that confused face from somebody else. To use this phrase, take the words next to and think of them similar to close to and used as almost. Now, if something is next to impossible for you to do, that means it is almost not doable or not feasible for you to do.
And this phrase can also be used to say something is next to impossible to believe or to happen. And in these situations, that thing is just difficult or hard for you to believe, or it's hard for itself to happen. So let us give you some more examples so you can use this phrase perfectly. The first one is, it's just next to impossible to have a nap in the office when it's really, really chaotic there.
I don't know who's napping in the office, but that can be true. It would be difficult to nap if people are running around and yelling. So it's chaotic.
Maybe Asian people do this a lot because they can actually have or try to have some shut-eye in the back office or in the corner of the office because they would probably be able to recharge themselves if they can have a short nap or a short break during the lunch break. But just because the office is oftentimes chaotic and noisy, so nobody can fall asleep. And so they cannot take a nap while being in the office.
And another example can be, it is next to impossible to pass the exam if you only study the night before.
Maybe you're genius at preparing and cramming for exams within a very short period of time. So now it's also possible for you, but for a variety of people, including us, it's next to impossible to prepare for an exam if you only have one day before it starts. So chances are that you're gonna fail that test.
A lot of people, they've crammed for a test right before, but not a good idea for an exam because it would be next to impossible to pass the exam. Number 3. Not to mention.
Not to mention it was bitterly cold outside.
The first pronunciation point you need to be aware of is upon the words not and to. Similar to the last phrase, the not ends with a t sound and to begins with a t. So drop one of the t sounds and say not to, not to.
And the second point for this phrase's pronunciation is upon the word mention. And notice the way that I say the word mention. I didn't say mention, because mention is the way that the dictionary suggests you to say or pronounce this word. Whereas the majority of North American people will say mention. They turn the sh sound into the ch sound and they say mention. not to mention. They don't say not to mention. Even though that way sounds alright, but it's not the most popular used way in North America. So if you want to sound like a native speaker of English in North America, then you say mention the way that I am teaching you.
That's a really great point to make because sometimes the Oxford Dictionary has a difference between what they have written and how the majority of people actually say it. So just keep that in mind. This phrase is used to introduce more information and emphasize your point. Keep in mind, this phrase is an idiom and is used as in addition to and furthermore.
There are two ways that you guys can use for the part that's coming after this phrase. And let's give you guys some examples so you have a better understanding of how to use this phrase. So for the first example, we have living in a foreign country is difficult, not to mention you have to learn the language and the culture. So in this first example, we have a clause after the phrase not to mention. So what is the second example we have, Maddie?
The second example is, I admire his vast improvement in English, not to mention his native-like proficiency in French and Spanish.
Notice in this example, Maddie has his native-like proficiency, and this whole phrase is considered as a noun. So that concludes our second way for the part that's coming after the phrase not to mention, right? So we have not to mention plus a clause as in my first example, and now within Maddie's example, we have not to mention plus a noun. So either way, your sentence is going to be correct. Number 4, be snowed in. Well, my car was snowed in, so I took public transit to get here. The pronunciation for this phrase is pretty simple, and all you have to keep in mind is snowed ends with a D sound, and you link it to in, you have snowed in, be snowed in.
This phrase is used to say that something is stuck in the snow. So your car is snowed in, that means your car is stuck in the snow, so you can't drive it. But if somebody gets snowed in, that means they are stuck in the house because maybe the snow is piled up in front of the door and they can't get out. So that's how somebody can be snowed in.
I really like your explanation because the car can be snowed in. It's stuck in the middle of snow. But if a person is stuck, it doesn't mean that that person is stuck in the middle of snow. But the house is actually stuck in the middle of the snow. And so the person can't go out or go anywhere with it.
Exactly, yeah. So one example could be, this morning the bus was late because it was snowed in. So for a long time, the bus was stuck in the snow that people had to shovel it out in order to get it to move. So it was stuck in the snow this morning, and that's why it was running late.
And the second example can be, I hate winter because I can get snowed in when I have errands to run. And this example is pretty true for a lot of people who are living in a cold country like Canada. Let's say it's heavily snowing outside and everywhere is covered within snow. The house, the car, the roads, snow everywhere. They can't go anywhere. While in order to run errands, you gotta get out of the house. And just because everything is stuck within snow, you can't go anywhere. That's why you're snowed in.
I really felt like that this winter because here in Canada, more often than not, there was times that we were snowed in. We could not go anywhere just because of the snow. Number 5, patches of something or patches of black ice.
The roads in the suburbs weren't well plowed, but the city roads seemed just fine. Just a few patches of black ice, nothing too crazy.
The first pronunciation point you need to be careful of is the connecting between patches and of. We'll say it as patches of. Patches of. That z is brought over to of. Patches of.
And it depends on what you want to use after the phrase that Maddie just mentioned. Patches of. If you use the phrase black ice, then the next pronunciation point is upon the word ice. Because ice is totally different from eyes. eyes. If someone is having black eyes, that means that person is just got a fight with somebody else and got punched in the eye. And so right now they have the area around the eye is turned into black. And that is a totally different thing. Notice the difference between the way I say black eyes and black eyes. Black eyes is the melted snow. Now it becomes more cold outside because the temperatures drop down. So it forms the eye. So we have black eyes, right? But the second one is black eyes. Like I said earlier, it's just the dark circle, the dark area around someone's eyes because they just got punched or hit in the eye by someone else. So black eyes and black eyes. Now we're gonna ask Maddie how she pronounces these words. So Maddie, how do you say black eyes?
Black ice, black ice. So the ice formed on the road. And then black eyes, black eyes. So patches are small areas of things. You can have a patch of grass, a patch of flowers, or even a nicotine patch. And again, that's just a small area of something in a much larger area.
The word patch can also be used on clothes or pieces of clothing. Let's say you're wearing your pants for a long time and now it becomes having more holes in it, and you or your mom or your family member is trying to sew it up by putting some patches on it so you can wear it without dealing with those holes ever again.
So one example can be, this garden looks fantastic. There is a patch of tomatoes here and a patch of flowers over there. So in this example, it's really clear how patches is used. Garden is the entire area, and patches of tomatoes and patches of flowers are just the smaller areas inside the garden.
One example about clothes that I mentioned earlier. Mom is sewing patches on his clothes rather than buy new ones for him.
He must be a very naughty boy if he's putting holes in most of his clothes that mom just decides to patch them all up.
Or maybe the family doesn't have a lot of money to afford the son new clothes. That's why mom came up with a solution to patch his old clothes up or to make patches on his clothes so he could wear it again.
That is a great way to save a lot of money.
Right. Number 6, be deemed. And then after that, you use an adjective.
They said on the news that due to this warning, public transit would be closed at 4 and wouldn't reopen until conditions were deemed safe.
The only thing that you should keep in mind for the pronunciation is upon the word deemed. Deemed. So first of all, its vowel is the long E sound, so don't say dimmed, dimmed, because if you say dimmed, it means a totally different thing. Deem, deem, and then the ed part at the end is pronounced as the D sound, and so we have deemed, deemed. And after that, we have an adjective.
This phrase is used to say that you have a particular opinion about something. It's similar to considered. Now, keep in mind, this phrase is best used with simple tenses, so simple present and simple past. Try not to use it with continuous tenses.
So don't say, is being deemed. Is being deemed. Nope. Say, is deemed, or it was deemed, or it will be deemed. Because those are the simple tenses, not the progressive tenses. And so let's just give you guys some more examples so you know exactly how to use this phrase.
The first example is, Japanese has been deemed one of the most difficult languages to learn. So this means that people have an opinion that Japanese is a very hard language to learn.
And this is not just one person's opinion. It's the opinion of a lot of people. And so they have come to a conclusion that Japanese is deemed as one of the most difficult languages in the world to learn. Or same as the next example that I have here. Her personality is deemed terrible because of the way that she's been treating everybody in the company.
So that's really sad because she's treating everybody very bad that people came to the conclusion, or they now have an opinion, that her personality is terrible. So that's why her personality has been deemed terrible.
Maybe nobody wants to be friends with her in the office, or nobody wants to invite her out if they have a party at home or somewhere else.
Number 7, municipal, provincial, and federal.
I think this was also the first time that the municipal authority advised people to prepare supplies for a while because there was a risk of getting snowed in.
So the pronunciation you need to be careful of is upon the word municipal. Keep in mind we have the mu, the u sound like in cute, mu. And then the next ones are the short e sounds in this word. Don't say municipal, not correct. It is municipal, municipal. All those short e sounds. Keep them the short e, don't change them to the long e.
And the second word is provincial. Keep in mind when you pronounce this word, try to make the L sound at the end a little bit more clear. That way it sounds correct in native speakers' ears. Provincial, provincial. But when it is a noun, we have province. Then if we say province, the first syllable now has the R sound as its vowel. So province and provincial. Province, provincial. They are different. And then the last one is federal. Federal. Same as the word provincial. If the L sound at the end has to be rolled up and enunciated distinctly, then in this word at the end, we also have the L sound, and make sure you do the same for it. Federal, federal, federal. So all in all, we have provincial, federal, and municipal.
Now, the usage for these is they are levels of government. Each one has a different level. We'll start with municipal. So municipal is local. That means the city or the town. So you have council members, maybe a mayor. This is the municipal authority or municipal political bodies. Now the next level that is higher than municipal is provincial. And this is just for the province, similar to how we have states in the US. So provincial authority is right one above of municipal. Now the highest one is federal, and the prime minister is a part of the federal government. That means countrywide.
Now the first example that we have here is everybody should keep up with the municipal news to know what's going on in the city.
So, meaning you should make sure to check the news and see if the municipal government has released any statements or any updates. That's very important. Because in the conversation, you completely missed what the municipal authorities advised. That's why it's very important to keep up with it.
If you don't keep yourself updated with the news or the changes that are happening or taking place at the municipal level, maybe you'll put yourself at risk. Same as the situation I got and you just mentioned in the conversation about the winter blizzard.
And the next example, the provincial and federal elections happen every 4 years. So the government bodies or the people representing the country have to be elected in every 4 years. Number 8, to stop by and then a location.
Wow, that bad? Lucky me. After seeing no one at the office, on the way home I stopped by the mall to pick up some groceries. It seems like I need to watch the news more.
The pronunciation point you should be aware of for this phrase is upon the word stop. What you should do is stop that p sound. So you'll say stop, stop. You won't say stop, stop. So don't say stop by. It makes it more difficult. So what you should say is stop by, stop by.
You use this phrase when you visit a place or a location while heading to another location, which is your final destination. And this phrase is similar to drop by or swing by. And now let's give you guys some examples so you know exactly how to use this phrase. The first one is, do you want anything? because I'm gonna drop by the coffee shop on the way home. That means your final destination is home and you're gonna stop by what? The coffee shop. That is just convenient to happen. And so you're asking the person on the phone, do you need anything? Like, do you need any coffee? Do you need anything to eat? Because I'm gonna stop by. It's convenient for me to stop by. But was it my original intention of stopping by the coffee shop? No, because it's not my final destination. It's just convenient for me to stop by or to swing by or to drop by.
Probably because it's on the way home. So maybe it's on the same road or whatever it may be, but it's on your way home. And another example could be, I just decided to stop by because I'm in town.
Maybe he's saying it because he doesn't want the lady to know that he loves her or something like that. Because if she knows that he loves her, then she's gonna be a little bit arrogant, right? You need me, you come here for me, and this is all your attention. And driving all of those kilometers, a long distance, to come to meet me, that means I mean something to you, right? So maybe to save his ego, it's just convenient for me to stop by. So I know you're in town, maybe I just stop by. Number 9, the day or the night after or before.
It was broadcast the night before Friday, but along with that, we had a storm alert on our phone. How did you miss that?
For the pronunciation, all you need to keep in mind is for the word night, it has the T sound at the end, so you can either stop it by saying night, 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 or you can also distinctly pronounce it by saying night, night, night. So now let's get down to its usage. So Maddie, when are we going to use this one?
So this phrase or these phrases are used when you don't know the exact date when something happened, but you know how many days it happened before or after an event. So maybe, for example, something happened 3 days after Christmas. So Christmas is always a big event for a lot of people, but you don't know the specific date that this thing happened, but you know it happened 3 days after Christmas.
And for the particular phrase, the night before and the night after, of course, the night before and the night after, that's just one day before and after that certain event, right? Let's say the night before Christmas. Everybody knows that it's just one day before Christmas. And if you say the day after Christmas, it's going to be one day after Christmas. Let me give you the first example. I don't remember what date it was. All I could remember was one day after his wedding, he went on a honeymoon in Paris. So what is the event here?
The event is the wedding. The wedding is the biggest thing that everybody will probably remember. And the thing that happened after the wedding was, of course, the honeymoon.
And nobody is gonna care if you say it happens on Monday or Wednesday. And to be more specific like that, it's gonna throw people off because nobody is gonna care about the day, or it's just weird if you mention about the date, right?
Yeah, if you mention the specific date, like September 9th, he went on his honeymoon, you might get an odd look from people like, huh? How do you remember that specific day?
Exactly. And at the moment when you're speaking with somebody about that event, you're probably having a hard time if you were trying to remember the exact date. So that's why using this phrase is actually an advantage when it comes to the date that you don't really remember.
And another example, 3 days after his graduation, he left for college. So graduation was the big event. And then 3 days after that, he left for college.
Or you can also say 3 nights after his graduation, he left for college.
Both ways are correct in this case.
Yeah. So leaving for college is something that I remember he did, but when exactly that happened, I can't remember. I can't recall that information. That's why I just said 3 days or 3 nights after his graduation. Number 10, to assume something. I assumed it was just another test of the city's warning system because they've been doing that a lot lately. For the pronunciation, you guys should keep in mind that assume, for the second syllable, it starts with the S sound. Zoom, not Z sound, not zoom. Zoom, you can't say assume, but it has to be assume, right? And this word is a little tricky and weird because its noun form is actually assumption. And once again, for the second syllable of this word, it also starts with the S sound. You can't say assumption. But the reason that I call it weird is assume and then turn into assum. Assume and then assumption. The U sound has changed into the sound and you say assumption. And that's all you need to keep in mind. Now let's move down to its usage.
So this word is used in a way to say that you think or believe something is correct without actually having proof. Whether it is actually wrong or right, you don't know, but you believe it to be true. So in the case of the conversation, David assumed it was just another test of the warning system, and that was a very big mistake. It turned out to be wrong. His assumption was wrong in that conversation.
Be careful when using this word because nobody wants you to assume anything about them or anything about what they did. So your information or your assumption may be wrong and might be really harmful toward them. That's why be careful when using this word.
So for example, you don't want to assume somebody is a bad person based upon how they look. Maybe they have a lot of tattoos and piercings, and you assume that they're a bad person because of it. But that is usually wrong. Maybe they are a very nice person, a caring person. You don't know. So don't assume that they're a bad person based upon the look.
Or don't judge a book by its cover. To use this phrase, after the word assume, you need to use a that clause. Or native speakers usually leave out the word that and they use just a full, complete clause after the word assume. And let's give you guys some examples so you know exactly how to use this one. Since it's raining really heavily outside, I assume we're not going on the picnic. My assumption is we're not going on the picnic as we planned because now it's raining.
So I believe your assumption in this case was correct because if you try to go out on a picnic in the rain, nobody's going to enjoy it. And another example, don't assume anything about something you don't understand because you might be wrong.
That's pretty true. If you don't want to risk putting out the wrong information, then don't assume anything.
Number 11, took off for and place.
I wasn't sure how much snow my area got because I hadn't been out until today. By the time I took off for work, everything was already plowed and clean. The main thing I was worried about, though, was the whiteout.
So the pronunciation you need to keep in mind for this phrase is the connecting between took and off. The k in took is connected to off. Took off. Took off. And that's the only pronunciation point you need to keep in mind. So let's go down to the usage.
So when using this phrase, you shouldn't change or take out the word for. For example, you take off something. That means you take off your clothes or you take off your shoes, and it has a totally different meaning compared to what we are having right now. So when you take off or when you took off for something, especially for a place, that means you start going there. And after take off, you should use a purpose. A purpose. For example, you're going to work. You're going to work. So going to work, to what? To work. And that's your purpose. Even though it sounds like it's a place. For example, I'm about to take off for work. That means you're about to go to work. You're starting to go to work.
So work is your purpose here, or even the place because you have the workplace. So take off for work or took off for work.
And another way to use take off is you have to do something afterwards. For example, she is taken off to take her kids to school. Now, after taking off, we don't have any particular place, but it's actually to take her kids to school, and that's an action, right? She's going to school and taking her kids to school. So with the two ways that I just mentioned, so Mari, now can you please make an example of the first way? So we have take off, for, and then an intention.
Sure. So the first example being, I'm calling to ask if you're about to take off for the wedding.
And we have wedding is the intention or the purpose of you going out, right? So took off for the wedding. Now it's my turn to give you guys one example that uses take off and then to do something. So I'm going to take off to go to the grocery store soon. So notice that after take off, I don't have an intention, I don't have a purpose, I don't have a place. But all I have is to go to the grocery store. Number 12. Ignorance is bliss.
Yeah, the meteorologist on the Weather Channel said to expect high winds, causing the loose snow to blow around, creating a whiteout with little to no visibility.
Wow, ignorance is bliss. Because I didn't know anything about that, so I wasn't worried at all. So for the pronunciation for this one, ignorance is bliss. The linking right there, ignorance is, and then bliss. Ignorance is bliss. Ignorance. And for the word ignorance, make sure that you have the g sound right there. Ig. For the first syllable, the g sound has to be stopped. Ignorance. And don't ever say ik, because it's not the k sound. So ignorance is. And then the last word is bliss. Bliss has the short e sound as its vowel. So don't say bleeds. Don't say bleeds. Don't say ignorance is bliss. But it has to be ignorance is bliss.
So to use this phrase is used to mean that if you don't know something is going on, you don't have to worry about it. Now, keep in mind, bliss is an uncountable noun and does not need an article. So you don't say ignorance is a bliss or ignorance is the bliss. That would not make sense. So just ignorance is bliss. Now going back to the conversation, David didn't know anything that was happening about the blizzard. He missed all of the warning signs. He didn't watch the news or even get the alert on his phone. So he had no idea it was happening. And when it did come, he was totally fine. He was not worried about it or he didn't panic over it. So in this case, he was ignorant of the blizzard. So ignorance was bliss.
And now just because this phrase is pretty simple, let's give them some example. So the first example that I can come up with is ignorant might be bliss when it comes to mild things. And mild things are things that are not considered important or big problems. And so if you don't know anything about small things that are not considered important, then of course you save yourself some headaches.
And another example, ignorance might be bliss when you're not active on social media. This holds a lot of truth for people who aren't always scrolling through social media and seeing some of the bad things that might be happening. If you don't know that they're going on, you don't have to worry about them. Number 13. Now, this phrase depends on the tense. The power goes out, went out, or gone out.
But if the weather was that awful, why the power didn't go out?
And the pronunciation you need to be careful of is upon the word out and it's connecting. So the first one, the power goes out. The z in goes is brought over to out. Goes out, goes out, goes out. And the next one, went out. So with this one, you drop the T in went and you'll say went out, went out. Bring that n over to out. And this just sounds more native because typically we don't say went out, went out. And for the last one, gone out, gone out. Same thing as the one before. The n in gone is brought over to out. Gone out, gone out. Now those are all of the pronunciation points that we need to be careful of. How about this usage?
So you use these phrases to say that the power or the electricity is no longer available in your house. And if it is no longer available in your house, you can't turn anything like your electrical equipment or appliances on because there's no electricity in them. And don't change the word out for off because if you say off, If the power is off, that means you have control over it. Maybe there's a switch somewhere that allows you to turn it on and turn it off. And if you turn it on, the power is on. You turn it off, the power is off. But in this case, the whole unit and its power is going out. And so you don't have control over it.
So why is the power out? Maybe something happened like the big storm and it knocked over a power line and there's no longer power running to the neighborhood. So your house wouldn't be the only house that has no power, but your neighbors and other people around would be without power. Or maybe the electricity company had a malfunction or the equipment is not working properly. So the power might go out for the town or the city, which could be a big problem.
So instead of saying goes out, went out, or has gone out, you can actually say the power is out, the power was out, or the power has been out.
All of these ways are correct. It just depends on the tense and the way you're going to use it within the sentence. But keep in mind, again, out, out. Don't say off. So some examples can be, I couldn't send in my assignment last night because the power went out in my house. So because the power was out, my computer was not working, so I could not send in the assignment. It was out of my control.
Maybe because the power was out, so the internet was out as well, and that's why you couldn't send it to your instructor. And another example can be, to keep everything on at all times, even when the power goes out, hospitals have to have a generator as its necessity.
So that's how they keep things within their control, making sure that everything continues to work and run very well. Because if hospitals didn't have any power, that would be a big problem for a lot of people.
And just because the power goes out, the surgery cannot go on, and the surgeon cannot finish it, and is going to put the patient at risk.
So to make sure that no patients are put at risk, and to solve the problem, they use a generator to provide power when the electrical company cannot.
Number 14. To scrape off something on something, or to scrape something off of something. Gosh, now I know I was lucky not knowing anything, but then again, my car didn't survive the blizzard. It's such a hassle because now I have to get a new battery for it and also scrape the ice off the windshield if I still want to use it. So the pronunciation point for these phrases is actually lying on the word scrape, because it starts with a skr sound. And it can be a little tricky to pronounce, so make sure that you have all the sound together. Scrape, scrape, scrape. And then this word ends with the P sound, so scrape, scrape. And it depends, if you use the word off just right after the word scrape, then you have scrape off, scrape off, scrape off. And that's the only pronunciation point that you should keep in mind for these phrases.
So to use this phrase, it is typically used in cleaning and used to say that something is stuck on something else, so you have to scrape it off. You have to physically remove it off the surface of something else. Going back to the example that we had in the conversation, you have to scrape the ice off the windshield. So the ice is stuck on the windshield, and the only way to get it off is you have to scrape it off. But let's say it might be loose snow on the car, then you can't say scrape it off because it's not stuck to the car, so you would only brush it off. So let's clarify these phrases with some examples. He had to scrape the gum off the bottom of his shoe. Now this example, the only way to get the gum off the bottom of the shoe is by taking something else, maybe a spoon or whatever you have around, to scrape that sticky gum off of your shoe.
Or you can also change this sentence a little bit by saying, he's trying to scrape off the gum on the bottom of his shoe.
And another example can be, I have to scrape the burnt food off the bottom of the pan. I'm pretty sure this is an example we all can understand because maybe we've burnt food onto the pan, and the only way to get it off is by scraping it, physically trying to remove it. Number 15, not all gloom and doom or not all doom and gloom.
Anyways, good chat, Maddie. Thank you for the info.
Yeah, no problem. Good luck with your car.
It wasn't all gloom and doom if I had to dispose of the car, thanks to the new house being close to the office.
The pronunciation you need to be careful of is the connecting between not and all. So that T in not is standing between two vowels. So we have the flap D sound, nod, not all, not all. And again, that D is brought over to all, not all. And another point that you need to be aware of is gloom and doom. This might be a little bit difficult because we have two oo sounds, gloom and then doom. Not all gloom and doom. To say this fast, you would have to practice slowly at first and go up from there. So this phrase means that maybe not everything is as bad as what it seems. Going back to the conversation, David said even if he had to throw away his car or get rid of his car, it wasn't that bad because the office was close, so he could just walk to the office. So not everything was terrible. It's not all doom and gloom. It's not all bad.
Coming up with the first example I have, it's not all gloom and doom if I have to take the test again.
So there's a silver lining, or not everything is that bad?
Exactly. So taking the test again is such a pain in the neck, but then the way that I perceive it is not all gloom and doom because, yeah, maybe it happens, and if it happens as a bad event, then yeah, taking it again is just another option that I have, and I don't mind doing it.
And one last example, it's not all gloom and doom if I have to find another job. The reason it might not be all gloom and doom is because maybe your current job, you're not happy, or they might not be treating you right, and you might be looking for another one anyway. So it's not all that bad if you get fired or you have to go to a new one.
Yeah, so nothing is really fixed and stable with jobs. So it's not all gloom and doom because you already prepared yourself with the mentality that your job might be unstable at some point. So you have to go out and find a job. So it's not all gloom and doom.
So those are all of the phrases that we have for you today. If you found this video helpful, be sure to like the video and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on the next one. And leave a comment below if you have any suggestions on how we can improve our future videos or something that you would like to see.
And now if you understand all the phrases that we used in Conversation 11, don't forget to go back and rewatch it to see if you can understand it better this time.
And another thing to do, in order to make sure that you fully understand and know how to use these phrases, practice them. You have to practice with these phrases to make sure that you can use it in your day-to-day conversations correctly. So if you have to watch this video again and practice along, that is great. Or go to the conversation video and shadow along with the conversation video. These are great ways to make sure that you're able to use these phrases on your own.
And that's it for today's video. We hope to see you guys in the next one. Bye.
Bye.